South Africa is an interesting country. There's 11 official languages and a couple more unofficial languages. So it's like a big, like melting pot of a lot of different cultures. And like we were the pariahs of the world at the time. Like if you can imagine.
They may
like,
not know about apartheid.
Yeah. Do you know what, like Nazi Germany? South Africa had like they called it separate development. It was like this master plan by the ruling white class to dominate the country and keep control of power. So it was a gnarly place to grow up, and it is a gnarly place to grow up anyway. But if you're a person of color, it's a hard nation to grow up in. But during that period, while I was at school, a man called Nelson Mandela was released from prison. He's a political prisoner, and he'd been in prison for many years, 27, I think. Wrote a book about it, Long Walk to Freedom. It's worth reading if you're a reader. And he kind of led in a very godly way. He led South Africa into a transition where power was shared among the different races, and democracy was for the first time introduced to South Africa. It was a big deal. So it was easily the most interesting thing happening in my little world, because we were on the brink of civil war. The country was on the brink of civil war, and somehow, in the kindness of God and through the strength of this guy's leadership, we made it out of it. So I left high school and went to study politics and philosophy because that was the most interesting thing going down.
Now correct me if I'm wrong, you're a Rhodes Scholar.
Yes, sir.
Want to explain what that is?
Well,
Do you know, how many of you know what a Rhodes Scholar is?
I'm with the right people. It's just like I think there's like, each state has a scholarship every year, and if you do great in your grades and you do well at school, you can like win that scholarship, and then you get given the opportunity to study at Oxford University for a couple years, 3 if you can re-up if you're doing all right.
So what he's not telling you is you have to be pretty darn smart to win a Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford.
But you can see they've lowered their standards. Anyway, I'm just sitting here with sand between my toes after wave storming. Whoever that committee is, they're rolling in their graves. Yeah.
And then Oxford, you majored in not music.
No, philosophy, politics, economics, and then while I was there, Jesus got hold of me at 18, so I was a late bloomer, because I grew up in a family of faith. So everybody else got there before me, and he got a hold of me, and I remember I'd just been dragged to a Bible study because my sister needed a chaperone, and my dad told me I had to take her. There you go. That's how it starts. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, come on, man." He was like, "You're doing this." He was pretty stern with me, and I was like, oh, "Okay." And then I sat in the back of it was actually in a university lecture hall, and it was a lot bigger Bible study than I expected. And when I walked in, there was music, and everyone was worshiping, and it was like 1991. Nelson Mandela had just been released, but it was a mixed collection of people from different groups over South Africa, and it was a miracle that all these different people were in the same room together, enjoying life, and then enjoying God. So I was like, "Whoa, what's up with this Bible study?" And then I sat at the back, and while the guy talked about God and explained passages of scripture, I was just like going, "Nah, I bet he's going to say this next," and kind of mouthing off in my head. And then the conviction of the Lord just hit me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is true." Like, I'm just going down the checklist. This checks out. This checks out. He actually talked about how God reveals himself through creation, and how he reveals himself through our consciences, and then how he reveals himself through Christ, through Jesus. And I was like, yes. And I was like, yes. I went off, and I just got it. And so, obviously, there was a lot of things there was a lot of structural engineering that had to happen in my heart for God to keep me moving. But that's how I got in the car with my sister and preached to her all the way home. She was only there to meet a boy. but she got Jesus from me. And then I woke my parents up because I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like all this like circuitry for the lights in a building had been already put in, and then someone just like pulled the hand, all the lights went on. I was like, ooh.
Probably one of the best reasons to be woken.
They weren't. They were like, who is this kid? What have you done with our son? Yeah. So that's how Jesus got me, and I was playing in bands at the time, and they had a band, but worship music didn't look like it does now. So there was like their band was a piano. I mean, like my initial unfiltered thought was, oh my gosh, these nerds. Like that's what I was thinking. Like these guys are leading this, and it was like a piano and then like a lot of woodwind instruments. Like I don't know whether like oboe or bassoon in worship was, but that was what was happening, and it was on fire. Like I couldn't understand exactly how it all worked, but I'd like go in there, and then these sweet like nerdy classical musicians would play this, and then the spirit of God in the room, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm coming back next week. So I just kept coming with my amp guitar, and eventually like a month or so into it, they were like, okay, you can turn that thing on and play. Yeah. So that's how my sister she plays the flute, so she was straight in with the woodwind. But they took a while to trust me and my metal band and my mullet. Yes.
Mullet?
Yeah. Hardcore mullet. Yes, ma'am.
It's okay, Brenton. How do you keep that passion alive? Like, how do you keep it going even when people are not playing like fun music? I guess.
Like, how do you stay worshiping, or how do you stay a Christian?
Just like in life, because you said you had like a huge come to Jesus moment. And
Yeah.
You just were super excited about God. Like, how do you keep that passion alive in your relationship with God?
I think for me, like I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do it. Like there's books and there's CDs, and like back then, this was funny. Like I remember coming up to one of the cooler dudes who was at church, and he was a surfer and he surfed big waves, and he was a rad dude. And I came up to his car. He had a nice car. All these things were like important to me, and he had music playing. And I went and listened, and I thought it was going to be like Nirvana or something cool that was on, but he was listening to like the music my mom listened to. It was worship, like Hosanna Integrity. Then it was like jazz fusion. That was what worship music was, and I was like, I gave him a hard time. What are you doing? Listen to this, Steve. I thought you were cool. It's like, oh, there's something to it. Just see how it goes. So that made a big difference. Just starting the day with that stuff. I basically started in the early days. Just started the day listening to worship music, and that kind of pulled me into God's presence. But perhaps the most consistent thing that keeps me close to God is the people of God. So that feels like the gimme. Yeah.
Use that degree.
No, then I felt the Lord say He'd like me to stay and work with a church, which bummed me out pretty hard because so I had this like super long game of it was like I'm a Christian, but I can still rock. That was the thing back then. I was like, I really want to do this. I want to be.
U2?
Yeah, U2. They were a band. Like just to shame myself and embarrass. Like the covers band that we were in was like a Metallica and Guns N' Roses. Don't judge me. Those are the days. So I was like, and it was the thing. It was before Napster. It was like to get music was like you had to work pretty hard, especially out there on the tip of Africa. Like to get a record, you had to work through the summer, then like write somebody and ask. It wasn't easy just to find stuff. So I just wanted to do that. And then I felt like, while I was at Oxford, I'd written a couple songs. I guess I told you and Lauren this last night, but I'd written a couple songs, and a guy came over and said, hey, we're doing a worship record. If anybody's got songs, please send them in.
Those songs were?
All Are Thirsty and Lord Reign in Me. Yeah, the breakup jam. Just between us, though. Nobody tell my mom. So I sent those in, and then the guy running it said, "Hey, we'd like to use these," and I was like stoked. And then he said, "We'd like you to on the record," and then I was like, "No, no thanks. I don't want to be a famous Christian." It's a lot of pressure, just to be like, I'm not even sure if I'm down with everything that's, I didn't completely understand the church and everything. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be the right guy. And I said, "Oh, please give me a week just to think about it." And then I haven't, this is like maybe the one time I've ever had this, but during that week I had a dream. I was staying in the top section of a dormitory like this, but it was the attic, so the windows opened up. And in the dream, I see a tornado coming towards one of the windows. And I'm like, "Oh no!" And I race towards the window to try and keep it out, and I lock this window. And then the tornado moves around to the other windows, and I'm like racing towards them, and I get one window closed, and then the other one I can't close, and it pulls me out of my house and sticks me on the roof. And I wake up, and I have this like conviction that God's like, whatever you feel about being on stage, I'm asking you to like climb out the window and stand on the roof for Jesus, Sorry, Nirvana and Metallica. So that's how that happened. He wrestled me into it. Yeah, it wasn't a cool thing to do. I don't know if it's. I've got so many questions for you guys. I'd be so interested to know, what do you think worship music? What is worship music to you? Like, how does it? If you think about it, is that the cool jam, or is it still like that's what my mom listens to?
That's a question.
I think it's been culturally accepted.
Yeah.
Depends on who you're talking to. So I talked to someone, he was like, "You don't listen to Christian music, right?" And I was like, he was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Are you asking us personally?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like Maverick City, I'm an old dude. It just looks like whatever's going on there, that looks like a good party. Like, it doesn't look like 20 grown-ups in suits and a choir.
No, I feel like it depends on the artist for real, because Maverick City, I think it's generally accepted as a cool band, and
Brenton,
but there's some music that people just think is lame because a lot of it is similar to each other. So there's this whole genre of Christian music that all sounds the same, and then there's different genres like Bethel's making so many songs that are really unique, and Hillsong Young and Free, people like that. So it really depends on people's tastes and making sure they're all unique.
But you have some options.
Yeah. Some people like it, some people don't, and it depends on what they've heard. If that makes sense.
No, that's super helpful for me. Yeah. I guess I'd guess that, but those weren't options. So, there was, if I wanted to be in the worship band, you couldn't even lead worship on an acoustic guitar. It wasn't one of the, I remember the first time someone picked up an acoustic guitar and led a song in Cape Town, and I was like, oh my gosh, you can do that? That's legal?
And now it's flipped.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
You feel like you're going to lead with an oboe?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you guys are crazy. So that was different. And then we on this record, Hungry, we did a punk song at 140 beats per minute, and the drummer had to count us in, and the Vineyard movement was the whole vibe was dial it back down and let Jesus work, which we were also into, but also punk. So so the room was full and everyone's experiencing the presence of God, and then the drummer was just 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just remember hearing the whole room going like this, what's gonna happen next? Is Jesus even in the room anymore? So yeah.
Well, in that case, we do a good mixture of upbeat and relaxed songs, and we also do a mixture of hymns that are usually restyled. They're the same words, they're the same structure, but usually they have really cool chords, and sometimes they add a chorus from an old song or whatever. Do a lot of different stuff, honestly.
Yeah. You got some options.
So were you surprised when, so you turn these two songs in and then go home? Is that what you did?
Yeah, I got back on the bus because I was a student and poor. You wouldn't know about that. And then, I got back on the bus, and I'm staying in England away from my family and all my friends. It was a pretty lonely season. Studying at Oxford had a lot of pressure. Like the only way I figured I could get through this degree, which was like you had to do 3 years in 2 years, was I actually stayed up 2 nights a week. Don't recommend. So I stayed up 2 nights a week and wrote through the night. And at Oxford, you write your paper and then you talk about it you read it to your tutor, and then they have questions for you and you have a discussion, and then you go home and collapse or cry or whatever. Like, yeah, and then that's it. You do 2 of those a week, and the semesters are real short. They're like 8 weeks, and then right at the end of the 2 years, you write all the subjects that you took. So like all 8 subjects you write in 1 week, and that's the only week that counts for your grading. So it's super high pressure. Yeah, people are peeling off left and right. I about lost my mind. And you had to write dressed in like like some kind of gothic movie. You know, you're wearing like a white bow tie and a black suit. I call it the Banquet of Fear. Yeah, yeah, it was terrible. Don't recommend. Yeah, but I learned stuff. It was good. It was interesting. And you know, maybe this is worth saying. Like I never felt like, oh my gosh, I hope my faith is going to handle studying philosophy at Oxford. Like it didn't even occur to me. I was too, green. I was too wet behind the ears to even think about it. But I never felt like whatever ideas were discussed, whatever was presented, was ever going to be like God was ever going to go, oh my gosh, this is too complicated. They got me. I don't exist. I just never felt like that God was going to be embarrassed by whatever discussion was going to, like, however like good the discussion was, I always felt like God could handle it and my faith could handle it. I was more scared of theology college. Actually, I did a year of that. So I was like, I'd heard from my grandfather, was a church planter, the church is dying by degrees. That's what he'd tell everybody. So I was like super nervous when I went for the theology seminary interview. They didn't look like this.
So when did you realize that music might be the track?
Once I started getting paid to do it, yeah. Worship leading wasn't really a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
In churches, they didn't hire worship leaders.
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, you could, like there was a board where you could go and sign up to be a worship leader. That was like, well, you like, may as well be a hula dancer. Yeah.
So you're dependent on like royalties from, if you're going to be able to do it, either touring or how did it work in those days?
Well, at the beginning, I just had to take another job, so I worked as a sandwich maker. My mom and dad are losing their minds because they're like, oh, you've done like 7 years of higher education, graduated from Oxford, now you're making sandwiches. Like, where exactly is God in all of this, you know? And I didn't have a great answer, except I could be wrong, but I have a feeling I'm meant to be here. So that was, and that was okay for like the first few months, but when it turned into a couple of years, like I remember going home to visit friends and from school, and they, were living, some of them had done well and were living in golf courses and driving expensive German cars. And they're like, so what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm good at the avocados. So that was like a real, like left field move for me career-wise, but I did feel God was in it, so, yeah.
How were you sure that, like, coming out of Oxford, you said you felt like God was calling you to a sandwich shop? Like, how do you feel like God led you in that direction? Was it just like a gut feeling, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, you never know 100% because it's faith, right?
Yeah.
Faith is always having just the right amount of information to believe and just the right amount of information not to believe. It's like you're not going to get, there's no like skywriting. There was a book I read like years later, which I think would have been very helpful to me, called Decision Making in the Will of God. It's a good, balanced answer, quite a big book on that question, like how do you discern? But I was kind of asking my family and friends, and everyone had slightly different opinions, but the ones I trusted were like, I think this is God. Yeah. As much as you can know. I will always put that caveat in faith, because like, even if, whatever it is, however strong you feel about something, unless it's an instruction from Scripture, it's more like, I feel like, God might be saying
Do
this.
you have peace about it? Like,
Well, that works to a point. If you start getting anxiety attacks, that doesn't work so good. Peace isn't necessarily a reliable umpire. If you have an anxiety disorder, you're going to feel unpeaceful about anything that's going to flare up your anxiety. So then it's like, I've got no peace about this. That happened to me, like when it came time to get married. So I had to figure this out. I fell in love with this girl, and I'd use that, let the peace of God rule in your hearts and mind, and that was like kind of almost like church culture where I grew up. So, but then I started I didn't know they were panic attacks. I didn't know what that was. I was just like, man, I don't feel peaceful at all. I feel very unpeaceful. Peace is the last thing I'm feeling right now. And then I'm like, oh no, it's God. It's God telling me I can't marry this girl I've fallen in love with. So she's a smart girl, my wife, and she was like, well, I'm not going to fight God if God's telling you. But I just so you know, he's not telling me. That's what she said. And then and then it took like 12 months of absolute so many disasters where I'm like, I feel good about it. Maybe I've got a green light. And I had to figure out, mental health and the will of God. Maybe that's a good book to write. But but it's the same. Yeah, it's totally maybe. But that's where community helps, right? Because we don't get we only get one perspective. But the people of God can give us a balanced perspective, I think. That's where the safety and the joy is. That's where the life is, just like worship. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering, how you are able to, being a worship leader, there's some weeks, some Sundays or whatever that you're just like, oh, I'm so stoked, I'm ready to do this. And then you just have weeks or months or periods where you just feel burnt out, but you feel like you have an upholding responsibility. So I'm just wondering, how you are able to kind of push through that and, what you feel is healthy and what you feel is a healthy balance, for being a worship leader and, taking time to lead other people as well as making sure that you are doing the best for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's two versions of that question, because one is the physically, are you handling, are you managing? And then there's spiritually, are you handling or managing? Physically, I have chronic fatigue syndrome, so I have to kind of balance that all out, which in some ways is terrible, and in other ways it's actually helpful because it's like, oh, I have a limit. I know what the limit is. There's a limit, which is a reality that I can bring to the other thing, to the spiritual thing. I'd like to think I can walk on water, but I'm just a disciple from Cape Town, I'm just this little dude that Jesus has got a hold of. So I, again, lean on community a lot. Most of the time, if I'm in a leadership position, I like other people in the group to be doing the praying. I'll start the meeting and say, hey, so-and-so, would you pray? It's normally the last person that you ask to pray. Because I think whatever God's doing in there, however unsuspecting, that's real. And I'd quite like to hear what's happening. So it's almost like, for me, worship leading and leading is almost like hosting, and less like, I'm going that way, follow me, I've always felt like, for me, the approach is to kind of lead from behind and see what the Lord's doing. Because he's got plans, and, he's using people. There's always going to be someone way more lit than you are, and there's always going to be someone who's over it, more than you. So, yes.
Was it a hard transition for you from writing music about fleshly things to moving from writing songs about God? Yeah. It was all girlfriend songs up until. Yeah. So then I was like, well, it would be nice to write a song for God. I mean, I like him. I'm making all these other changes, Wouldn't it be nice? And then, but I tried and nothing worked. So then I tried this. I'll just tell you, because I was, where you guys are at. I was like, well, I'm still not writing songs that I dig, I believe in. They don't move me, even if they're true. So then I did a little bit of fasting for it. So I'd fast on a Friday.
and I did that for a few weeks, and then something clicked over, and it changed. Yeah, I'm not like you can see me. If you wouldn't look at me and go, that guy's all about spiritual disciplines. But that helped. For I don't know how it accomplished it. What happens in the spiritual world that we don't see with our eyes, but that made a difference. Yeah.
Were you surprised when the songs you wrote took off?
Oh yeah, dude. Totally. I was just like sandwich maker dude and leading worship in the church, and the church wasn't much bigger than this room. So the church I got saved in was like 2,000, 3,000 people and growing crazy, and it was fun. It was multicultural. It was alive. It was hard to resist that church. This church was like it was like the office, you know. That's what it felt like. It was just like a group of people like, oh, I guess we're here again, Dunder Mifflin, you know. Like I remember leading worship one morning, and there was a guy who used to sit on the front row, and he had these massive Doc Martens on, and he had his Doc Martens over the front seat, and I looked at him like I'm thinking, is this like really? Are you gonna do this? And he looked back at me like, what? You want to go? Like we can deal with this right now. Let's go outside. I was like, and the pastor was super into drums and drum sounds, but we didn't have a drummer because we were such a small church. So he said, I had this drum machine. It was a little Alessis. And on Saturday afternoons, I'd program the drums for these songs. And every now and again, I just get it so wrong, and I'd start like a really mellow song, and I'd hit the thing, and it'd just be, poof, ga, poof, poof, ga. And I'd have to go, sorry, everyone. Yeah. It was pretty raw. Yeah, it was raw times. Yeah.
And so how were you surprised?
Well, like when it was all over, that was the night we recorded, that was the most number of Christians I'd seen in a row since I'd been in England. Because they were like, I think it was like 3% of England was going to church at the time. So it felt like it was a trip. It was pretty like, I remember asking somebody, oh, you seem to be in pain. Are you all right talking with her? Would you mind if I prayed for you? And she's like, absolutely not, you know, no deal. No openness to God. It was a shock to the system. And I remember praying to God, like, why have you got me here? This is a mistake. Haven't you seen my faith? I'm definitely going to fold under these circumstances. That's some pretty honest prayers of them. So it was a lot of, and I, like on the bus ride home, I remember thinking, man, did that even actually happen? Because it feels so surreal compared to everyday life in Oxford. And then,
Where was that?
like the city of Oxford in England.
But you were recording it.
And we recorded in London in the school, yeah.
School.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just like basic, you know, basic life, basic Christianity. And you know, there was like no, internet wasn't a thing really. There was no Google searching. So it wasn't like you knew what was happening in other churches. You might know something from a book, but that was it. And then all of a sudden we were just getting these like, email was just kicking off where we were getting these messages saying, hey, do you have the chords to the song? Because people wanted to do the song, but there was no like guitar tabs or worship together or anything like that. It was like, definitely do it yourself, you know? And I was like, how do these people in Florida know that like our church of 70 sing these songs? How do they even know these songs? And it was just, God did something. I have no explanation. I've come across other people in life who've done well in things that I've wanted to do well in. Let's see. And I've asked them, like, so what do you think the secret ingredient was? And nobody's got a secret ingredient. That always seems like, did you ever listen to the band The Fray? Your parents probably did. Yeah. So that guy, the lead singer, Isaac, I think he's a Christian.
Yeah.
I met him at a party, and I was like, do I ask this guy the question, you know, like, because at that stage I was still thinking, well, maybe we could make the rock and roll band work. So I was like, I could either be friends with this guy or ask him the question. And I was like, I'm asking him the question, I can't help it. So I said, you know, what was it that you think that made your band successful? Like, what turned it from just being a sweet band in Colorado to being a band everybody knows? And he's like, just a series of like unlikely events ended up causing us to do well. That was it. It's the last thing I wanted to hear from him. Yeah. I wanted a step by step. True story.
So, did you want to be a worship leader, or did you want your songs to be popular?
I thought it'd be cool to write songs that were helpful to people. That was, I was stoked on it. And worship leader wasn't really a job. Like, you could be a worship leader, but that was like your hobby. It was like being a professional pickleball player or something. Like, nobody aspired to be. When I grow up, I'm going to be a worship leader. No one's saying that, having that conversation with their parents. It just wasn't a job.
Like churches had choir leaders, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't even play anything, they just went like that and let it choir.
Yeah. So it was like, the choice was basically like, do you want to do ministry? Like, you want to be hands-on helping the church grow from the inside, or do you want to be doing that from the outside? And I thought, man, it would be quite cool to do it in the entertainment industry. That looked cool from what I knew back in Cape Town, South Africa, you know. But, you know, so a man makes his plans, and the Lord orders his steps. And he's a good dad, yeah.
Is there anything you regret about your decisions, like, since you, I don't know, your songs have been more well-known, been more famous man, I guess?
Shoot. It's such a, like, if I had to write the story, it's such a complicated, twisty little story. It's like a Dickens novel. Like, I would never, it just doesn't make, I would never go, well, then this would happen and this would happen. It's just so unlikely. Like, I'm such an unlikely dude that I'm a guy from Cape Town. Nobody in my school's doing anything close to what I was doing, you know? And I wouldn't even have chosen it. But I've seen the kindness of God and the goodness of God in the land of the living. I mean, I don't have regrets about anything I've tried to do for Him, whether whether I was on point or not, whether I got it right or not. It's a noble endeavor. It's one life. What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life, you know? Yeah.
Which song that you wrote has the most meaning to you?
Oh. Normally like the one, whatever one I'm busy with. The one that makes the most sense is Everlasting God is the song I wrote. And it's from Isaiah 40, and like my wife and I both got sick with chronic fatigue at the same time. She had a really great job in the city and was doing great, and things were going good in Oxford for me, and we both had to move back home, back to South Africa, and I moved in with my parents at 29. I was like, God, I can't believe you've let this happen to me after all these things. What about the sandwiches? I mean, that was Saint Teresa of Avila. There's like this quote of her. She was like a revivalist in the Middle Ages, and she was traveling to some convent or somewhere, and her cart got wrecked, and she ended up in the ditch in the rain in the dark, and she apparently said, God, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you've got so few of them. It's like, that's the most honest prayer I've heard. But I was like the same. I was like, geez, man, my 20s. And now this, I've moved back in with my parents for my 30s. That doesn't sound like a good deal. Like, I was really feeling it. And then I just, rediscovered this passage in Isaiah and remembered that I'd written this verse, strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord, before I got sick. And a friend came down, we wrote that song, and the song actually helped me. I was just like, I'm going to sing the scripture, but then to see it connect with other people from such a low place, that was nuts. That means the most, because it's crazy that he could do that out of those circumstances.
That's where I don't know, a lot of music comes from hard stuff.
I hope it's not all from hard stuff.
No, a lot of the music people connect with is.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how many bad things are going to happen? How many songs do you want, Yeah. Maybe no more hymns for me. Yeah. But it is true.
So we have a number of budding musicians and people that are messing with songwriting. Any advice to those guys?
Well, pursue what you love, like work at it. I mean, if it's something that you can't help doing, then just go as hard as you can on it. That's my. Because then, like if this thing that it's a desire of your heart falls within the range of acceptable things to God, which is turns out quite a big category. Like when the people were coming to John the Baptist and saying, "Hey, can we still be like soldiers?" And they were going to be soldiers for the Roman Empire, you know, the occupying force. And he was like, "Yeah, man, just don't do this and don't do that and do this." And it's shocking that what God is cool with as a career. He's cool with a lot of things, man. He's a like extravagant God. He's got lots of options. If you're into something and you're after it and you can't stop doing it, then chase it as hard as you can. That's my advice. Take some risks.
And then you might redirect you after you have all your schooling done.
Correct. Yeah.
Put you in a sandwich shop or something.
That's right. There was a question there.
Yeah, so when you're like coming up with the songs, is it something where you like sit down and intentionally say like the next hour I'm just gonna write? Or is it something where you're just like kind of sitting around, you're like, oh, you know, kind of cool, you just figure it out?
Sometimes I will say this about worship songs. You're talking about worship songs or just general? Well, I think this is true for all songs, but I know for sure it's true for worship songs, is that at a certain point you have to learn something. Yeah. I've dumbed it down. In the end, you have to learn something. You're going to have to do some homework. So, because like especially, you know what you guys have that I don't have at 49? Rick still got it. I don't know how Uncle Rick still has it, but at 49, like to feel things deeply, it takes a bit of effort, you know. I don't know why, like that fader just gets turned a little bit. You have to work hard at feeling things. But at your age, you feel things. That's like rocket fuel. That's it. That's like the ignition. And feelings can get you quite a long way in songwriting and in art. That's like the initial, supernova or whatever it is that gets you out there. And then, and typically that used to get me to verse and maybe halfway through a chorus. Then I'd run out of things to say. I'm like, let me start saying something else. Then I'm going to change the subject. But songs don't work that great. Songs are about one thing. A song is about a thing. It can't be about two or three things. Like whatever the hymn writers did. It's just like they're so short. They're only like 100 words anyway. Like it's hard to make a point in 100 words. So at that point, I study, or you can reverse it and just make sure that you're learning stuff as often as you can. So typically, it is crazy the resources that we have these days. Like you can listen to the best preachers in the world, like right here. We can all leave and go listen to the best preacher. That's crazy that you couldn't do that. Yeah, like even 100 years ago. So I try to stay learning. And then I try to stay listening.
It's interesting that you say that, because any song that I've ever written has come off like a whole year of Bible study or a whole year of just life with God. And it wasn't something I try, what do I write about? I wrote it and it was done, and it was just that.
Yeah.
But I know that's not always the normal thing to do when you're songwriting.
No, especially if you're making a living. Like it's one thing to go, oh, this is nice, here are a couple of songs I write, see you later. But it's different when you're like trying to put your kids through school, and then you've got to figure out how to do it without all the feelings. Most people try to do it in community, like people co-write. So normally, like if I get together in a session with somebody, we'll sit down and say, what's happening, what's God been telling you or showing you or teaching you, and we'll go from there. Or someone will just come in flaming hot and go, man, I felt this morning, and they sing it. But it doesn't matter where you start, it's just where you finish. Yeah.
How do you know when a song is finished?
When your mom cries after she hears it.
Your mom cries.
You should do that after anything.
Oh, wow, that's sweet. It's a sweet mom. Yeah. Well, for a worship song, it's pretty easy, man. You just take it for a test drive in a congregational setting, and if it eats it, that's I give it one more go. Lord Rain and Me nearly got the light of day because I did it once in South Africa, and everyone was like, you must be going through stuff. Like that, they had that, they had that look, and I was like, oh well, too bad. But when we took it for a spin in England, it worked out. So, yeah.
How do you feel about, like, as a traveling musician, I remember when Rick said he called you, you were like, I'm not really part of like a specific church.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you worked out the community aspect of that, because you weren't part of like a solid community in one area that you were traveling?
Well, it's not that I haven't been part of a church, I just haven't always been on staff at a church. So I have always been part of a community of believers. Although the last couple of years has been weird because we lost our house in a fire and had to relocate and COVID, you know. But yeah, faith is hard to do outside of community. Like I just can't, I'm relational, and that's the only way it works. So yeah, traveling, I didn't travel like a lot of musicians travel super hard. We were able to travel to where, the way I did it was Jude, my wife, makes the bookings, and then she knows how much she needs me at home, you know. So we kind of figure it out together. If I'm gone too long, I'm like, sweetie.
It's your fault.
Yeah. You did this. Yeah.
And when he said when somebody told me he was a worship leader, I naturally presumed it was like the typical hired guy at a church to lead worship. So,
Right.
when he kind of gave me a fuzzy answer, I don't understand.
Well, yeah.
So what do you do?
Illness did take me out. Illness took me out from being like, I couldn't be like a youth worship pastor because I'd be dead. Like I just, like the pace that Rick goes at, like they'd be like, take me to hospital after 3 months. I cannot keep up with I can't do that. I don't have the crystals. So it's an old story.
What do you do when you travel? I've heard about bus and travel, but are you leading worship just at different places? Or?
Yeah, at events. I'll lead worship at an event. And maybe we'll do that like 12, 16 times in a year. Yeah. And then it's family. Yeah. My youngest told me she wasn't down with me being away that much. She's persuasive. Yeah.
We got time for one more question. Ready? But you'll think them all with Susie leaves, I know. Brenton, thank you very much. Can we pray for you?
Yeah, I'd love it.
Thank
Thank you.
You guys come up. Gotta go stand.
Yeah, I guess so. Here we go.